Hi, welcome to Accessibility with Meg. This is Meg, and today we are going to learn about how to handle errors using WCAG and within accessibility. So WCAG has 5 success criteria that are specifically used to handle errors. Now, all of these are under the principle understandable and the guideline input assistance. 3.3 input assistance. Now, 3.3.1 error identification, 3.3.2 labels or instructions, 3.3.3 error suggestion, 3.3.4 error prevention, legal, financial, and data, 3.3.6 error prevention, all. So WCAG addresses error handling primarily under guideline 3.3, which is input assistance, like we said, which aims to help users avoid and correct mistakes. Now, all of these 5 success criteria, they are the main success criteria that are used for this purpose. Now, 3.3.1 error identification is a level A success criteria. When an input error is detected, the item in error must be identified and the error described to the user in text. So don't rely solely on color or icons. The error must be communicated textually so screen readers can convey it. 3.3.2, which is labels or instructions, level A again. The provision of labels and instructions when user input is required is very essential. This is preventive. So it helps users understand what's expected before they can make the error, right? So giving information correctly and instructions correctly is very important. And 3.3.2, labels and instructions, level A, describes just that. And then we have 3.3.3, error suggestions. It's a level AA, error suggestion. So if an input error is detected and suggestions for correction are known, they have to be provided, unless doing so would jeopardize security. For example, don't hint at valid passwords. That's logical, right? So don't do anything that would jeopardize security. But if there is an error which is detected and there are suggestions for that error, those must be communicated to the screen reader user as well. 3.3.4, error prevention. This is again level AA. So for pages that cause legal commitments, financial transactions, or data submission, such kind of pages, there must be at least one thing about these which is true, which is that they are reversible. So the submissions can be undone, or they are checked, that is, data is validated and the user can correct the errors, or a confirmation. So a mechanism exists to review and confirm before final submission. So before the submissions are done, you need to reconfirm, and there needs to be a way to review all the choices before anything is submitted, right? So that mechanism should be in place. So these are the 3 important ways in which you could prevent errors from happening, right? 3.3.6, error prevention, all. Now, the 3.3.4 error prevention, which we had just seen, these are for legal commitments, financial transactions, or data submission only, right? But error prevention, all, which is a AAA requirement, it extends 3.3.4 to all user submissions, not just high-stake ones. Okay, so let's try to understand each of these success criteria in a little more detail. First, we will deal with 3.3.1, which is error identification, level A. Now, what this success criteria says is that if an input error is automatically detected, the item that is in error is identified and the error is described to the user in text. So this is talking more about automatic input errors, like system errors, or there is some fault in how things are being processed. There's something in the background that's happening that is identified automatically, and these errors, they must be identified and described to the user in text. Okay. Now, the intent of this success criteria is to ensure that the users are aware that an error has occurred and can determine what is wrong. So, the intent is passing information when an issue occurs, so people with an assistive device are aware of what's happening around them. Okay. For example, if there is an unsuccessful form submission, it is not sufficient to only redisplay the form without providing any hint that the submission failed. The error must be indicated in text. So this is needed, that your information, the error that you have identified, must be displayed as text. So this success criteria goes hand in hand with 3.3.3, which is error suggestion. So in error suggestion, basically you would explain what the issue is in plain text. So identifying these errors happens with 3.3.1, which is error identification, and 3.3.3, error suggestion, would be used to explain the error. Okay, so it's not sufficient to just identify it. It is also required that the issue be explained, the nature of the error, including the identity of the item in error. This needs to be explained to the user in plain text. Okay. For instance, here the example that they have is that email is not valid, would pass 3.3.1, but please provide a valid email address in the format name@domain.com. Also conveys how it can be fixed and passes both. So with an error suggestion, you are also giving them a way to overcome that issue. So error identification with a very simple explanation of the error satisfies 3.3.1. But for 3.3.3 error suggestion, you need to explain or give a way to solve the issue, right? A suggestion to solve or to correct that issue is needed. Also, while it is perfectly acceptable to indicate the error in ways like using images, color, a visual indicator, etc., in addition to text description, the most followed way is by programmatically informing the user of the error. And this is done using ARIA labels, sometimes internal, just simple tags with names and providing information. Sometimes context help is provided, etc. Right? So the way that this information is passed can vary from just being a simple text with an image, some color, or a programmatic way to explicitly explain that error. It is also good practice to show errors in line with error messages next to the specific fields that are in error. Errors could also be listed in an alert or a dialogue, right? Now, within WCAG documentation, there are provisions for sufficient techniques which cater to situations and they give solutions for how you could present your error text information, right? So there are two situations suggested within there, which is the first one, situation A, if a form contains fields for which information from the user is mandatory. So there are some fields which required information must be provided. You cannot leave it blank, basically, right? So how what are the different techniques that you could use for that? The suggestions being providing text descriptions to identify required fields that were not completed. So maybe a situation where you fill in a form, you try to submit, or you move from one field to the next one and you've left the field empty when input is required for that. So then you can come up with context level text descriptions that identify that the field is required to be filled, right? Also using ARIA invalid to indicate an error field is one of the ways when when non-ARIA techniques are not enough. Then you also have providing a client-side validation and alerts. So and indicating required form controls in PDF forms. Okay, so that's what is important. Is if you have a required field, then that cannot be left blank, and information and instructions should be provided for making sure that that error is handled and it's not left blank, right? Another situation which they have on there is if information provided by the user is required to be in a specific data format or of certain value. So sometimes you see that your passwords need to be entered in a certain way, right? So there needs to be a combination of certain characteristics, and you will see these issues when people put in the wrong password combinations to create a password, and you will find that those errors are handled, right? So that all that information must be accessible with a screen reader, must be provided to the assistive device as well. So having it in the form of a text is the best way, and to display these information, right? So to handle that kind of information, there are some suggestions using ARIA alert dialog to identify errors, using ARIA role equal to alert or live regions to identify errors, using ARIA invalid to indicate an error field, providing a text description when the user provides information that is not in the list of allowed values, right? So if they've not given you the right value combinations, then you give them a text description when that error has been identified. And providing a text description to user input falls outside the required format or values. Providing client-side validation and errors, providing client-side validation and adding error text via the DOM, indicating when user input falls outside the required format or values in PDF forms. So the WCAG documentation really gives you a lot of information. So if you just go in and look at this, you also have advisory techniques. So that it will provide you, and when you click into each of these are descriptive enough. They explain what they're doing in there and everything. So it's a lot of information and content that can be learned for these techniques, and a better way to handle the errors that you might encounter. Moving on to the other success criteria, this is 3.3.2, labels or instructions, which is a level A criteria. That's very simple, that all labels and instructions are provided when content requires user input. So you have any forms or any kind of content that require user input, labels or instructions are provided when that is the case. Okay. The intent of this success criteria is that authors know basically what input data is expected. and so they can put in the correct input data. In case of radio buttons, checkboxes, combo boxes, etc., that provide users with options. Now, each option must have an appropriate label so the users know what they are actually selecting. So the idea is to give the right information out so they can give you the right input, right? Also, data which has formats, like we said earlier, we discussed earlier. So for like data entry fields, which might have things like dates or passwords. All of these have certain formats, right? Even if there is a email that's being used as an ID, there is a format. You have an ampersand and then the domain name at the end, right? So all of these kinds of things need to be clearly written out in case of an error identification, and the instructions of how these can be corrected are important too. So all that this success criteria is saying is that labels or instructions for form fields or any fields, methods that take input from the user, they must be clear and they must be in clear text. Okay, moving on to success criteria 3.3.4, which is error prevention for legal, financial, and data. This is 11 level AA success criteria, and the goal of it is is so that users can avoid submitting incorrect important information. So it's more like a preventive method for preventing any errors that might happen because of incorrect information being input into the fields, right? So there are the thing that you do here is you provide ways for users to confirm, correct, and reverse important submissions. So if there is anything which is with legal data, financial data, or data submissions, you have to provide ways which are at least of which at least one of the following is true, which is they are reversible. Like I think we discussed this initially. The reversible submissions can be reversed. They're checked, as in data entered by the user is checked for input errors. So you can have context level help. You can have help as they're entering it. You can have prompts. You can have proper instructions and labels that will tell you this is an issue if you're providing wrong information, things like that. And then the user is provided an opportunity to correct them. So when it is identified, the user is also given the opportunity to correct these errors. Another one is confirmed. So the mechanism is available for reviewing, confirming, and correcting information before finalizing the submission. Right, so we've seen all of these techniques. They are basically utilized in a lot of the forms that we submit today, right? So many forms which are of importance, they are reversible if you make mistakes. You can also, there's a lot of information and help provided as you fill out forms. Also, once you have like you are ready to submit, you can review your submission. You can also like make any corrections that you need, and then you can submit it. And they also, you must have come across where you're submitting an application, say for a job. You have a chance to review your application before submission. You also, if you have something that you're deleting which is of importance, you find places where it doubly asks you, are you sure you want to delete this particular information, right? So that kind of correction, that kind of input error assistance, and also information for prevention of errors is what this success criteria requires. WCAG provides some examples, which is like order confirmation. If you go to a retail website and you are purchasing something online, order confirmation flow is something that requires a lot of this kind of testing. And also things like the example given here is a stock sale. So a financial services website lets users buy and sell stocks online. Again, when the user submits an order to buy or sell the stock, the system checks to see whether or not the market is open. If it is after hours, the user is alerted that the transaction will be an after hours transaction. It is told about the risks of trading outside of regular market hours and given the opportunity to cancel or confirm the order. So that's just an example that WCAG has provided, which is a very valid one. And then you have different techniques, sufficient techniques, and for different situations you may have. For example, if the application causes a legal transaction to occur, such as making a purchase or submitting an income tax return, then these kind of techniques work with it, providing a stated time within which the online request or transaction may be amended or cancelled by the user after making the request. Also providing the ability for the user to review the correctness of the answers before submitting, providing a checkbox in addition to a submit button. Okay, so sometimes you have this little checkbox which says confirmed, and then you can submit your information, okay? Or you have a checkbox which says that these are all the things that the required information has been attached or has been given for this application, for example, some application or something, and then you can check all of those checkboxes and then submit. So you know you haven't missed anything. So you're preventing those kind of errors right there. Also, if an action causes information to be deleted, then you have to provide an ability to be able to recover deleted information. Also, requesting confirmation to continue with selected action, providing a checkbox in addition to the submit button again. If a web page includes a testing application, providing the ability for the user to review and correct answers before submitting, requesting confirmation to continue with selected action. So there are a lot of situations that you would come across where you would use all of this, and it is important to cater to people with accessibility needs, so that errors can be explained, context can be explained, errors that are identified, they are aware of it. So they're not lost, right? I mean, imagine not being able to see the screen and there is an error that has occurred and there is no information passed to you about what the error is. You're totally lost in that case, right? So that's the main crux of all of these five success criteria that are used to handle errors within WCAG and accessibility situations. Finally, let's just look at this example, which is a form that has been made accessible in a number of ways, for preventing errors, for identifying errors. Just what we covered, you will find all of these in this form, right? Now, when you look at this form, you see that in the start, you have an instruction which is in text, which says fields marked with an asterisk or a star are required. Now, this information is very important because the minute you land here, you know these are your required fields. If you were just to use color with no text, and nobody would know what this means, right? So this is a very good example. If you come inside of here, like in this form, you have a personal information inside of this here, and you have the first name, last name, very clearly labeled, right? The date of birth very clearly, and it's also telling you the format in which you want the date of birth to be filled, and everything is in text, right? Phone number, it says this is optional, very clearly in text, including your country code. So it gives you an example of the format that is expected here. For the email address, clearly within the label or the section account details. So your email address, it says that we will send a confirmation to this address. I would also, it would also be nice if they could give you the format, but everybody knows the format of an email address, so we don't have to worry about that here. It also gives you a username, giving you the information about what the username can contain, password, what it can contain, and there is a confirmation password here. Preferences, and now you can see that this is a select box, and you can select the different countries. You also have a preferred contact method. All of these would be within like a field set and a legend kind of code, right? Your radar buttons, because they are related. These are related fields. So we're going to check on the code as well in a bit to understand that. So you can see that everything's so clearly laid out. And then you have an option, a button, a very clear button to create the account. Okay. So some of the things or patterns that you might be looking for when you're testing is that your labeling controls are in place. So you have, like when you look at your fields, right, they very clearly, it has a label and it says for first name here. So you know that this label is for this field, right? So that's required. You have to have every field that has an explicit label for with matching ID. Okay, so you might be looking for that. You'd also look for required fields, making sure that ARIA required true is used within those fields. So this is a required field, so you can see ARIA required is true here. You also have an ID of first name, and the label for the first name is right here. Okay, so things like this are important. So here's another example of a contact form, and you have all the details with the labels in place. You can see that you have in context instructions that clearly tell you what the pattern should be like when you're filling up things, and everything's in text, which is a good thing. You also have over here again the fields marked with an asterisk are required. I would put this right at the start. I prefer it up here before they start filling out the form, but this is not a problem as well. I mean, you can have it here too if you think it's more aesthetically pleasing. Okay, so some important things with WCAG that you would keep in mind with error handling. First, like as we learned, WCAG requires that when an input error is detected, the item in error is identified and the error is described in text. Okay, now this is just context instructional help, but when you input something wrong and you try to submit it, then it should identify that error and give you valid instructions for correction, right? The error message should tell users what is wrong and ideally how to fix it. That is important. That's for error suggestion, as we had seen. And the error text can be shown inline or at the top of the form. So sometimes errors are clubbed on the top of the form, or they can be shown inline, like right next to where the issue occurs, right? So for, say there's an invalid email address, your error message can come up right next to this field, or it can come up in a summary above on top of the form, okay? As long as the user can perceive it in text or as a text alternative. It can also be shown as an alert or a dialogue, but it needs to be understood by the user at the end of the day. Okay. The next thing is like your native HTML validation can meet WCAG requirements, but Browser messages may be generic, inconsistent, or not persistent, and not specific enough for a good accessibility support. So all of your browser, the messages have to be very clear. I mean, you might have everything working, errors are identified, and there are some instructions being given, but those instructions are not clear. Then it makes no sense, right? So the validation that you put through has to be very clear. It shouldn't be generic. It should be consistent. It should be specific enough to support accessibility. Okay. For custom validations, using things like aria invalid equal to true to mark the field as invalid, and connecting the field to a message with, say, an aria error message could work. The ARIA error message should only be used when the field is actually invalid, and the referenced error message must be visible when relevant, right? Also, the error messages, they also work well as live regions. So screen readers are notified when the message appears dynamically, right? So if there's a situation where, the error is not like it appears dynamically, like you've loaded content dynamically onto the the page, right? In such cases, you use live regions, and screen readers are notified with with a message when that happens, right? So, in case there is an issue with the loading, that information must be conveyed as well. Also, ARIA described by, which is very commonly used to associate helper text or error text with a field, especially when you want the description read when the user focuses the control, right? Also, you have ARIA required is equal to true. Now, this is a field element or a attribute which will indicate that the field is required. But this does not replace actual validation or error messaging. Always keep in mind that just marking it as ARIA required is equal to true is not enough. You have to handle the issues when they turn up with an error message that's clear, and it's text, and it's very clear about the instructions on how this error message can be helped. That's very required. Okay. And color alone is not enough, like we know. You have to use text paired with anything else that you might want to use to show issues, but using text is required. Also, keep your error copy specific, short, and actionable, and very clear. Okay, right. In terms of testing, the focus would be to verify that the error is programmatically associated with the field, right? So in the code we'd seen earlier, we saw the way that these connections are made, and so we need to make sure that that association is correct. We also have to make sure that it's visible to sighted users. Now, we are catering to people with disabilities in terms of sight, but we also have to cater to and make sure that sighted users can see the issues, the instructions as well, right? And they are announced and they are discoverable by screen readers, like we said before, very required, and they're specific enough to explain what failed and how to fix it. So these would be like your basic tests that you could that you would carry out. And yes, go into the code, check for your valid ARIA code that's in there, the valid programmatic associations with the field, the labels are correctly placed in there, things like your field set and legends are correctly placed in for groups. So that's something that you would look at when you're testing. That would be your testing focus for error messages. Okay, I will conclude here, and I hope to see you in another video next week. Thank you so much, and please, if you could like, share, subscribe, that would help me. And thank you so much, and I'll see you again. Bye.